Thanks to Sana Skin Studio for supporting the No podcast. Sana is a skin studio that is shifting the relationship with your skin and your products through goal-driven facials, real guidance, and clean skincare. Stay tuned for our promo code so you can receive $25 off of your first facial at Sana Skin Studio. Welcome to the No podcast with me, Nikki Spo.
What is up, superstars? You are listening to The Know, where it is not about knowing everything. It's about coming to know ourselves. I am your hostess, Nikki Spolstra, and I am so grateful that you are joining me on this journey to come home to ourselves and develop that deep sense of inner knowing that we all crave. If you're not subscribed to the show yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening on. We are available on all major podcasting streaming platforms and YouTube. And as always, you can follow me on Instagram at Nikki Sap Spo and The Know with Nikki Spo. Today, we have the exciting opportunity to speak with Kate Anthony, who is the author of The D Word, Making the Ultimate Decision About Your Marriage. Kate is the host of the critically acclaimed and New York Times recommended podcast, the Divorce Survival Guide podcast, and she is the creator of the groundbreaking online coaching program, Should I Stay or Should I Go?, which helps women make the most difficult decision of their lives using coaching tools, relationship education, geeky neuroscience, community support, and deep self-work. Kate is certified as a domestic violence advocate, a co-parenting specialist, and a high-conflict divorce coach. Yeah, there's a lot on that. If you're finding yourself questioning your marriage, or you know somebody who is, this can be tremendously helpful, and I'm excited for us to get to hear from Kate today as she shares answers to the questions that no one really wants to ask out loud. So let's roll. Kate, welcome to The Know, where it's not about knowing everything, but about coming to know ourselves. I'm so happy you're here.
I am so happy to be here, Nikki. I just adore you. And yeah, I love it. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
I think, Kate, that as women, or really as girls, and okay, it's not limited to just females, but people in general, but we sort of grow up with the mindset that we're supposed to check all these life boxes, go to school, study hard, get a job, find a career path that we're passionate about, make the most money we can, get married, have kids, and all that. And honestly, I want those things too, straight up. Like, I want a romantic partner to do life with. And I always have wanted that. And not because I can't handle being alone, because I'm really good at being alone, but because I genuinely want someone to do life with, to have an actual shared life. And for me, being an accessory to someone's life, that just doesn't sound appealing to me. I happen to want a partnership.
Absolutely. Well, but that comes from knowing yourself, right? Exactly what we're talking about. When I work with women, let's say, who are making this decision and they're concerned or scared about, leaving because they don't want to give up the lifestyle, we have to do a lot of work on uncovering their values. And listen, if lifestyle is actually one of your core values and it supersedes intimacy or connection, you do you, boo. Like, I have zero judgment about that.
Yeah. If you can come to a place where you're like, I own this about myself. This is what I want. I own this reality for myself. That's amazing.
Right.
Like, nobody can judge you. I actually have a friend like that. She's like, this is my situation. This is what I want. And I'm happy over here doing this. And these are the rules of my relationship. And I don't give a fuck what you have to say about it, because we're happy and we work over here, and that's her prerogative. And I'm like, yes, I applaud her.
Yes. If you are actively choosing that from an informed place, 100%. Whatever it is, whatever your choice is, whoever you want to be, that's great. As long as we are really clear that you're actively choosing it.
Yes, absolutely. And so for what it's worth, regardless of where anybody is currently in their marriage or life partnership, I think it's important to consider that people also change over time, right? We can acknowledge that lasting relationships happen with compromising your way to success rather than settling into dissatisfaction, and that couples need to be really intentional about growing together and choosing to love each other, which is an action, right? Not just like this concept over and over and over again. But we are meeting today to talk not about like necessarily the long-lasting love, which it is part of it, but we're really talking about divorce today and how you help women with your book, with your podcast, and with your online coaching program to make the ultimate decision about their marriages. What do you think is the very first thing that women need to look at when trying to make this decision?
Themselves. In a short version, themselves. I think what we tend to do when we're unhappy in our relationship is focus a lot of attention on the other person. Is what they're doing bad enough? Is it does it rise to the level where I should be able to leave? Is it them? Is it me? Right?
Okay.
And the only way for us to discern that is for us to drop deeply into ourselves first. And so the deep self-work needs to come first. And one of the very first things I have my clients do, and is in my book as well, is connecting with their capital S self. No matter how long, if you have been in an unhappy relationship, especially if there's been any form of abuse at all, you have spent years, sometimes decades, disconnecting from yourself. Just by sheer necessity, right? You hear that voice that's sort of welling up from within that's saying there's something not right. And for preservation, you're pushing it aside. You're saying, I'm not listening to that, like, la, 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 right? And so the very first thing we have to do is when you're actually ready to examine this and make a decision is to connect with that sense of yourself first. Which in my book sort of takes a few steps. One is connecting with your inner guide, right? Quieting all of the noise and dropping in and hearing what that voice says, right? We don't have to act on it now. We don't have to do anything about it, but we've got to get clear and we've got to hear it, right? And then we get to listen, once we've gotten clear on what that is, then we can listen for the critics and what they're saying and discern if there's any information that the inner critics might have that might be useful, right? Because sometimes they're just really terribly trained parts of ourselves, right? There's a truth to it, but they're just bad communicators, right? And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just the echo of the voice of the abuser or a parent or whatever. But sometimes there is a little bit of truth, right? And so we want to lean into that critic first to hear what they're actually saying so that we then get to be at choice. Because when it's just a tape that's been running in the background for so long, we're not really at choice.
No.
Right? So it's pulling apart these pieces and these various voices that we have inside of us. And sometimes there's a lot more, usually, always, there's more than just the guide and the critic, right? What else have we got going on? But again, as we can discern and as we can pull them apart, we get to be at choice about which voice we listen to.
I had some traumatic things happen in my childhood that, I developed these coping mechanisms and survival tools, right, that allowed me to overcome certain hardships, right? But in doing so, sometimes I learned to mistrust myself or to not trust myself. And so as I went into adulthood, I found myself as a person, right? Just not even believing I had intuition. I was like, I don't have intuition. I can't even trust my own voice. I can't trust my own thoughts. I am not a trustworthy person. Like,
yes,
for myself.
That's right.
So like when I'm hearing you say, when it comes to marriages and whether a person is deciding this and you're telling people to come back to this sense of self with a capital S, I'm like, I remember a time in my life, not just as it pertains to my marriage, but as just a human being, being like, what capital S self? I don't trust her.
Girl, same.
I don't trust her.
Yep, 100%. 100%. I mean, I absolutely. And that's why it's really easy to read a book, I do have a guided meditation and visualization. Like, it's not just like, so get in touch with your capital S self, because first of all, that feels a little on the verge of like toxic positivity, which I don't.
Totally.
Right? Like, there's work to be done here.
Yeah.
There is, right? I'm a coach. I work with people one-on-one. And in my programs, you will have the tools to be able to do this specifically. Because there's a lot of work to be done. I'm Gen X, and I think certainly my generation, and I think millennials too, like we weren't raised the way that we're raising our kids, right? Because our parents didn't really have access to this much information and this level of personal development. And we do. And so it's our responsibility to use it, first of all. But also, we do have all of this noise from I used to say that I was like a head on legs, right? I was so disconnected from any part of self, exactly like you're talking about, like literally had zero concept of what that would be. It actually took me many years to be able to discern and connect.
It takes time. Like that work takes time. Like it's not,
it does.
I remember people saying, and we're going to get to this also later. It's like, when you know, and it's like, how do you know you love somebody? Well, when you know, you know. How do you know you want to leave a marriage? When you know, you know. And there is some truth to that, right? Like there is some truth, because that, like, eventually something does click into place where you're either falling in love or trying to leave a job, or being like, what am I going to pursue with my business? Or should I get a divorce? Like, I do believe that there is something that clicks into place, but I think that a lot of people think that click into place is something that happens overnight, or like in your moment, when really it was like a bunch of these like tiny, tiny moments before that got you to the place where it finally clicked into place.
Exactly. I love what you're saying, Nikki, because that is absolutely true. And so the work that I do with women is really designed to build those blocks, like intentionally.
Yeah.
So that we're not just kind of waiting for, a shoe to drop or a frying pan to hit us in the head, right? It's like there's an intentionality in the building of those pieces, so to get you to knowing when you know.
As we focus on women in today's episode, like, why do you think women are so unhappy in their marriages?
Women are exhausted in their marriages, I think, because the entire institution of marriage is set up to serve and benefit men on the back of the labor of women. It takes men forever to decide to get married. And once they're in because it fucking works for them. Right? They're like, well, shit, this is great. We are in these relationships and we feel overwhelmed with the amount of work and labor, emotional labor. Overwhelmingly, women are the ones consuming personal development. We're listening to the podcasts. We're reading the books. This is why men come to me and they're like, well, is there anyone who's doing what you do for men? And I say, like, no, because you guys don't actually want to do the work. The ones who come to me, I have had men come to me and say, I want a program like you make for women, but for men. Mm-hmm. And eventually I had enough of them say that to me that I was like, okay, dudes, let's do this. We're going to beta test this. We're going to get together in a group. None of them signed up. Shut up. And I was like, well, I don't know what to tell y'all.
Like, you said you wanted this, and I gave it to you.
Wanted it. Yep. And then they didn't want it. And so this is, that's my experience. And, look, overwhelmingly, there are men who will do this work. There are men who are going to dive in, and I love you. And please bring your friends. I think more men have to be having these conversations with each other in order to, really move this needle.
Yeah. I also think, Kate, that like more men slowly, just very, very, very slowly, are actually like coming to terms with themselves, and they're like dealing with the self with the capital S, where they're like,
yes,
what do I actually want? Like, what do I actually want? And I think a lot of people really long for a deep sense of connection.
That's right.
And I think that's what people want.
And look, at the end of the day, what I really talk about globally here is the patriarchal systems that are put in place to disconnect women from our intuition, to keep men disconnected from their emotions.
That's right.
It doesn't work for anybody.
No.
Patriarchy sucks for men just as much,
100%.
honestly, if not more, than it does for women.
I totally am on that, because I feel like when people, especially men, hear the word patriarchy, like everybody wants to get real defensive. And it's like, wait a second, no, the patriarch doesn't work for anybody. It's not working for men either. Like you think it's working because you're like getting to the top of your position at work and you're making the money and maybe you have the wife and
right. You have everything and yet you're angry. You don't know how to process your emotions. You can't actually have the connection you're so desperate for because all you know how to do is turn to rage because that's what we teach you. And I think that millennial men are really the ones that's the generation that has really shifted into really doing the work and to really healing trauma and addressing things. Gen X men, it's fewer and farther between. Patriarchy is not working for anybody. And this is why women are so unhappy in their marriages. So there was a study that was done that was determining like the happiness level of people in different states of relationship. And this is for cis hetero people. The happiest people are married men, then single women, then single men, and the least happy population group are married women.
Married men are the happiest. The next happiest are single women.
And the least happy are the wives of the people who are most happy.
Oh, shit.
Right?
No, everybody don't go run and get your divorce. Don't go do it just that because you heard us say this statistic. No. Come on now. That's not what we're not pitching that either.
No, we're not. But what I am saying is like, if you relate to this, I have a colleague who's really happily married and she read my book and she was like, there's some shit in here I need to address. And she brought it to her husband and his response was, oh, okay, what do we need to do?
Oh, we love that.
Right? Because
love that energy.
Yes, right? Because the response, what he was saying was, if this relationship doesn't work for any one of us, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
So if there's something that doesn't work for you in our marriage, then we as a couple have to figure out how to fix it.
For sure.
That's the energy you want.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, in my work, which is not necessarily, I mean, these are people who are already
right. You're dealing with women who are considering
we're trying to decide. Right. But if they bring these things, if you bring this stuff to your partner and they say to you, "Oh, sounds like a you problem, works for me," then you have a problem.
Yeah.
Right? It is a you problem and not the way he's implying. So, the amount of domestic labor that we do, even men who purport to be in 50-50, right? That like, oh no, like I'm a feminist, everything's equal, I do all of the work. There was a Pew Research study that showed that actually, even in marriages in which the men really thought that they did half of everything domestically, they probably only did 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the men who are trying.
Yeah, right. Those are the men who are trying.
Because all of this...
Bless. Thank you guys for trying. Like the effort, we like effort. Effort's good.
We love effort. We absolutely do. And it's important to acknowledge that like, actually, your wife is probably doing more. And she's exhausted by it. And so when she says to you that she's exhausted and, then like, hear her because at some point she's going to run out of rope and then you're going to be blindsided. This is my favorite thing of all is that, women that I work with have been telling their husbands for years. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. Years, decades. Please go to therapy with me. Please, we need to do something. And they've been ignored. And then when their wife finally says, I'm done, they're like, what? I didn't see this coming. I never saw that. And we're like, are you fucking kidding me? My ex-husband literally said to me 2 weeks after I finally said, I'm out. Kate, I'm so sorry. I just never thought you'd leave. And I was like, so you knew that what you were doing was not okay and abusive and all sorts of things. You could have changed it because you knew, but you just never thought you actually would have to.
Because you would take it.
So for all the 3 years we were in couples therapy, you just kind of didn't think you really had to do the work.
So what about that? So what about like people who are going to couples therapy, but it's kind of like checking a box and like showing up but not actually doing the work? Do you think that happens a lot?
you want to work with someone who has advanced training, certainly in Gottman, in internal family systems. And you want to make sure that your couples therapist is actually kind of on the ball and really noticing the patterns and seeing what's what. The other thing is that and I cannot say this strongly or loudly enough, never, ever, ever go to therapy with an abuser. If you are being emotionally abused, therapy will compound it. It'll make it worse. It's actually contraindicated for couples therapy. So any form of active abuse, active affair, active addiction, all of those things, a therapist should not work with you in that case.
Why?
Because, well, first, so if there's an active affair or active addiction, like they can't be they're not in the process, right? The reason you don't go to therapy with an abuser is that, first of all, a victim needs to have somebody who is sort of unequivocally on their side and supporting them and understanding how, like, what's happening to them.
Wow.
An abuser will use the therapeutic process as a way to manipulate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right? And so it'll perpetuate that cycle of like, well, if you would only, then I wouldn't have to.
Right.
Right? They will use therapy speak. They'll grab as much information as they can in order to bring it back into the relationship as a further way of dominating and controlling. So if you're in an abusive relationship, they are not in the relationship for the same reasons that you are. You're in this relationship for intimacy, for connection, for, right, all of those things.
Yeah.
They're in it for power and control. And so, and that's a really hard thing to wrap your head around, right? And it's not always nefarious. It's like it certainly can be, but if someone is a narcissist and they've got this narcissistic wound, the power and control, it's all about trying to feed their ego and fill themselves up because they have no sense of self. And they're trying to manipulate and control you into fixing themselves and making themselves feel better, right? But it's all about power and control. They're not capable of empathy, first of all. So if you're in a therapeutic process with somebody who's not capable of empathy, like, it's a non-starter.
So you brought up the word narcissist, right? And I feel like the word narcissist is getting thrown around so heavily these days with the rise of like people having access to mental health care, which is obviously so important, and therapy talk, and there's a lot of people online, especially, like throwing the word out.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more commonplace, especially on social media. But do you believe that there are as many narcissists as people seem to think there are these days? Or like, what's the difference between a narcissist and a sociopath and somebody who's just selfish?
I think there are possibly just as many narcissists as we think there are. Partly because we live in a culture that kind of exalts it, right? We elect politicians. The culture of celebrity and reality TV. All of these things like kind of foster this sense of it, right? And celebrate it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
interesting,
right? And so there's that piece of it. But also I think that we have not had the words to describe some of these things that we've seen in our culture for, centuries.
Forever. Right.
Now we have the word. Now we understand. And people will say, well, like, but only 1 to 2% of the population is diagnosed with NPD. And it's like, well, yes.
Yeah, because the other people aren't going to therapy. Because the narcissists aren't going to therapy.
Exactly.
To get diagnosed.
Exactly. And narcissism exists on a spectrum, right? So
yes,
there's
exactly.
like perfectly healthy self-esteem, sense of self, all the way to narcissistic personality disorder. And people who are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder are only getting diagnosed because they're going in for something else, possibly an addiction, right? It's so they're, again, as you said, they're not seeking treatment because they don't think they're the problem.
Right.
So I do think it's widespread. I also think that there's a way in which we need to look at why we're looking at, why are we seeking the diagnosis?
Yeah.
What are we looking for?
Right.
If we're looking for validation, and clarity, then great. So for example, right, I want to know that a narcissist actually is not capable of empathy. No matter how much they're capable of masquerading, they're capable of pretending and layering on the behaviors, but they're not capable of feeling it. So that would be useful to me to know if I'm in a relationship with somebody that's exhibiting these behaviors and these traits, that possibly they're not capable of the empathy that I'm trying to get from them.
Well, yeah.
So the difference between a narcissist and a sociopath, the key difference, first of all, sociopath isn't really in the DSM. It's not a diagnosis. Sociopaths and psychopaths, they all fall under the umbrella of someone with antisocial personality disorder. And so the key difference is if you put a narcissist and a sociopath with brain scans, right, and you show them pictures of people in pain, the empathy centers of their brains will not light up. Neither the narcissist nor the sociopath.
Wow.
Their empathy centers do not light up. They feel no empathy. In a sociopath or a psychopath or someone with antisocial personality disorder, the pleasure centers of their brain do light up.
So neither one of them have the empathy switch to turn on. But specifically in a sociopath or a psychopath, they're getting pleasure from the pain.
So that's the key difference, and nobody wants that. And look, nobody wants any of those things, right? Like, frankly, I don't want to be in a relationship with any of that.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of us are, right? And so if you're constantly going to therapy and you're trying to get someone to see your point of view, and it's always being twisted to you seeing their point of view, you might whether they're a narcissist or a sociopath or just an asshole, you're not going to get your needs met.
All right, guys, let's take a quick break so I can thank our sponsor, Sana Skin Studio, with their OG location in Wynwood and their additional locations in Fort Lauderdale and Coconut Grove. Okay, so the best way I can describe Sana is that it feels like coming home. Unlike traditional facials, Sana's facials are rooted in education, and I love this so much. Every experience I have had at Sana has been a chance for me to learn more about my skin and its needs. I love that the facials are effective while also being accessible enough to be a monthly ritual rather than a yearly splurge. This is why the Sana membership is so great. I'm honored to be able to provide our audience with a promo code. Use the code TheNoGlow for $25 off of your first facial when booking at sanaskinstudio.com and additional incentives if you book a membership. I have absolutely loved my skin healing journey with Sana Skin Studio. A lot of people place high value on potential.
Oh boy, don't we ever.
What's right in front of them, right? I think that especially women, we're oh, even in dating, I'm a single woman, right? And I've met so many wonderful people, and I'm oh, there's potential there. Why are we looking at potential instead of what's right in front of us?
I think our nurturing and our caretaking is sort of our relationship currency in many ways. And then kind of men buy into that. And then we get into the relationship and we're I don't want to be your fucking mom. And they're yeah, but that was kind of what you sold me. Right?
Right.
So we have to be responsible for that.
Yeah. So Kate, I've noticed even with myself, as I go into the dating world, right? I'm
yeah,
I have found that there are people that I'm having to hold their hand through basic emotional hurdles or, hiccups or whatever. That's okay. I'm willing to work with people, but I don't need to teach this man how to be a grown-up. And that's his journey. You go to therapy yourself, you figure it out. But I'm looking for a man who knows how to, handle his emotions and is there already. Everybody's a work in progress, right? I am on a continuous journey of healing and getting better.
That's right.
And so I'm willing to be in a relationship with somebody who's willing to get better with me with a common goal.
That's right.
Right?
It's the difference between interdependence and codependence, right?
That's right.
Codependence is I will be better if you make me better, or I'm okay if you're okay, right? My identity and my okayness is dependent upon your love or your attention or affection, right? interdependence is like we're both on this journey together. We're both doing our own work, and we're choosing to come together in health.
Yes.
And that's what I want. That's what you want, right? I don't want to be your therapist. I want you to go have your therapist and then bring your therapy back to me. And again, like same thing with me. Like I have a therapist, I have a coach. I am never going to stop that work because as you said, we're all works in progress. But we all have to be progressing on our own in order for us to be able to be in a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Like, don't expect me to do your emotional labor for you.
That's right.
And I won't expect you to do the emotional labor for me. And that's not to say that like, you can't support each other emotionally. Like, I think that there's like tremendous intimacy in being like emotionally open with your partner. You know what I mean?
100%.
You have to. I think that that's a core element of any relationship is being able to be open and vulnerable and feel truly seen by your partner. But there's a difference between like being able to hold space and have that empathy for one another and expecting your partner to do the emotional work for you.
That's right. And that's why when women are like, please go to therapy, there's something wrong in our marriage, please come to therapy, like go the first time. Just go the first time. If your partner says there's something going on in this relationship that's not working for me, go to therapy the first time because you'll end up there at some point, you know, whether it's by yourself,
right?
You know, or you won't, but the patterns will repeat themselves over and over and over again.
People will often be like, well, he wasn't cheating. He's not hitting you. Right.
Right.
But those aren't the only two criteria for a person to be unhappy in a marriage. Right. Doesn't like while physical abuse is very real, sexual abuse within marriages is also very real, and infidelity is also very real in marriages. Like there is a whole world outside of those three things, right? Because I think that that's the standard. People, I think, and especially as women, we're trained to think like if he's, you know, even people like turn a blind eye to cheating too. They're like, oh, you know, whatever. He's a man, right? But the criteria for a happy marriage is he not cheating? Is he not hitting you? And is he not whatever?
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
So, yeah. So then let's talk about emotional abuse and what that might look like.
How does your relationship feel, right? Because we're often looking like, what does a healthy relationship look like? Or what does abuse look like? I want to know how you feel in your relationship. And you know, first of all, besides emotional abuse, right? I want to get back to what you were talking about before, which is the like, he's fine. He doesn't hit me. He's not, you know, he's fine. He's nice. He's a good guy. I just don't really feel it anymore. But, you know, I guess I should just stay because it doesn't rise to the level where people would be okay with me leaving, right? And to that, I say that, you know, that is such a patriarchal, you know, imposition on women that we have to sacrifice everything. We have to sacrifice down to our own happiness. Listen, this is it, y'all. This is it. We have one life. Do you really want to spend the rest of your life feeling unfulfilled? He could be the greatest guy in the world. She could be the greatest woman in the world. Whoever you're married to or whatever relationship you're in, they could be the greatest person in the entire universe and still not be for you.
Right.
And that's okay.
Okay.
It's okay because you deserve to be happy. Like,
that's like really, I like paused for a moment in thinking that because I think that there's a lot of people out there that don't believe that they even deserve that.
Right. That's right. And we got to look at that.
Yeah.
Right. But you do. You deserve to be happy. Women say that they wait for that. So, and every time they hear it, it just is like a bomb.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I mean, it's wonderful and it's beautiful. And it's also like, oh my God, how sad that like the idea that we get to be happy, that we deserve to be happy is that profound.
Well, I think that the generations before us were like really big on sacrifice.
That's right.
Like,
absolutely.
Our mothers and grandmothers and even like our fathers and grandfathers, it was sacrifice, sacrifice to provide for your family. The men were sacrificing to go provide for the family and the women were sacrificing to raise raised the family and everything was a big sacrifice. And I like, you
don't have to do
this
that.
is why I say, like, I don't totally believe in sacrificing. I believe in compromising your way into happiness, but not sacrificing your way into discontent.
That's gorgeous.
I don't think it should be sacrificial.
No,
I don't think my life needs to. I don't need to be a martyr. I'm not trying to be a martyr. I'm not trying to do it. I'm willing to compromise with you.
That's
so that we can find mutual happiness that makes us both feel fulfilled. But to be sacrificial, no, thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Right? So you deserve
sacrifice
to be
my
happy.
one life.
No. Right. Your one life. That's it. Right. So, okay. So there's that. And then there is the idea that, you know, we are, so emotional abuse. I want to get back to what you were asking me about that. So in terms of emotional abuse, this is about like, how do I feel? How do I feel in this marriage? Do I feel safe? Do I feel emotionally safe? Do I feel physically safe? Emotional abuse is the sort of systematic breaking down of another person for the sake of power and control over them.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's present. Emotional abuse is pretty much present in all forms of abuse, right? And I've spoken to a lot of victims of domestic violence and a lot of survivors who have said, and women who were physically assaulted repeatedly, who would say, I could take the punches, I could take the bruises, because the physical scars heal. The emotional scars don't heal as quickly, and they were much worse. The psychological manipulation, gaslighting is one of the top tactics of emotional abusers. And gaslighting is not lying. Gaslighting is lying for the purpose of making you doubt your own reality.
That's right.
So you start to feel like you're going crazy, like you can't trust yourself. Sort of brings us back to the beginning of this conversation, right? If you have been emotionally abused, like you don't trust yourself, you can't trust yourself, you have no idea what's real and what's not. And so, getting out of an emotionally abusive relationship can be far more difficult. And it really requires sort of a constant, like, checking in, usually with somebody else, right? A trained professional, to say, like, no, that is not true. That is not true of you. That is not true of the situation. I mean, I'll have women who, even in states where it's not legal, they will record their conversations with their spouses just so that they know that they're not crazy. No, he really did say this. Not to bring to their spouse to be like, but you did say it, right? Because that doesn't work. But just for their own, like, sense of peace that, like, I am not crazy. It's insidious. It to me, it feels like one of the worst forms of abuse, because you lose all of yourself in trying to get someone to stop hurting you, manipulating you, to just see you, to, like, love you. Like, I thought we were in this I think that we're in this relationship for love and intimacy and connection. And then you're twisting all of that and hurting me. But I think you're also in this for love and connection. So it doesn't make sense. And so I'm trying to, like, I keep trying to explain it to you. And, like, I don't understand. And it only makes sense if you realize that they're actually not in this relationship for love. They're in this relationship for power and control.
As a parent, now I have 3 kids. Something that I think about a lot as I look to protect my children and keep an informed household as I raise them is grooming. And so how does grooming come into play in this whole emotional abuse, like, realm?
The grooming aspect of it is the love bombing. It's the early stages of the relationship where you feel destabilized, where you're being showered with gifts or compliments, or, right, I have to see you right away, like, right? And it's the fast and the furious That's a red flag. Because anything that keeps you destabilized and makes you feel like you don't have time to breathe, that is a sign of love bombing and grooming. At the end of the day, people who emotionally abuse us tend to choose us. Well, let's take a narcissist for like an actual narcissist, right? They choose us because we're fucking amazing. They're not choosing us because we're weak, right? They're choosing us because we're amazing, because what they want is that mirror reflection of our greatness onto them. They're trying to derive their sense of self from us. And so they choose us because we're amazing. When it doesn't work, when we don't magically fill them up because we can't, because it's not our job to do, then they get mad at us and they abuse us and tell us we're doing things wrong, and give us like a different target to hit. But if you would just do this, then I would feel okay, right? And then we're like, we love them, and so of course we want to, quote, compromise for the relationship, and I'll do anything to make you happy. Like, of course I will, right? And then you switch gears and go in that direction, but that doesn't quite work either, right? And you're bending yourselves into pretzels to try and make this person feel okay. And then you've lost your sense of self. Like, slowly over time, this amazing, kick-ass, amazing person that you used to be, you're a shadow of that person. The grooming, it's not like, oh, let me find this weak target that I can, we're not a target because we're weak or anything like that. It's because we're awesome. And so that's why it's so hard for women too to understand that they're victims, because they're like, I don't understand. Like, this doesn't happen to women like me. I am strong. I'm powerful. I'm amazing. I'm a high-powered attorney. I'm a doctor. I'm like whatever. Yeah, that's exactly what happens to.
Because they need to bring you down a notch.
Yeah. Because they're
that power and control.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So, Kate, as we wrap up, I really want to talk about, like, we've talked about so many things, like, right, that these women are experiencing within their marriages that is making them dissatisfied, right? And bringing them to the space of like, okay, now I need to consider whether or not I want to exit my marriage.
Yeah.
How do you then help them do that? Because I get people get stuck in the purgatory stage and the uncertainty of it. Like, how are you helping people make that decision?
Well, I mean, it's multi-steps, right? It's the connecting with the self. It's the education. It's understanding what abuse looks like, or what's actually happening in the marriage. All the things that don't make sense, let's make sense of them. So you can objectively choose whether this is something you want to continue on with. Usually when women come to me, if you're people who are in healthy, happy relationships are not up at 3:00 in the morning wondering if they should leave their marriage. So there's obviously something wrong if you're coming to me to begin with. So I help make sense of it all in many ways, through education and through deep self-work. And once they have really made that decision, then I work with them on crafting the conversation. It's a really difficult and specific conversation that I have a very specific template for, because if any of your listeners have been going through this, they know this, that they're like, I had this conversation 15 times and he won't hear me. He won't believe me. He won't accept it. You're not going to get any acceptance. You're not going to get understanding. You're not going to get agreement. You're not going to get permission, right? This is not a conversation. It's a declaration. This is not a negotiation. We're done with that.
Well, I think that there are a lot of people who also play the card, like, hoping to get, like, hey, this is how serious I am. Will you now change?
That's right.
Like, with the play, they're playing the game.
That's right. And it might be. And if you've done that a number of times, you'll notice that they're like, oh, okay. Well, you might for a month, right?
Yeah, sure.
You're going to wake up the next morning and everything thing in the house is going to be fixed and all those shelves are going to be hung and all the, whatever it is, like the remote control battery is going to be changed. And you're going to be like, oh, he's changed. No, right? We're going to give that a good 3 to 6 months and see what happens, because it will invariably revert back. If you've been asking for change for a really long time and it hasn't happened, that's probably your answer. So I help with this in a number of ways. And then I help women. I'm a divorce coach. So I help women actually get through the process of divorce, the strategy. My personal mandate is for the children. I want to protect children at any and all costs. Yeah. So, right, we're going to filter absolutely everything through what's best for your kids. Your spouse, soon to be ex, may not. And probably, if they're emotionally unstable or, not sort of dropped in, they're going to be functioning from fight or flight, and they're going to be angry, and they're going to be using all tools at their disposal to try and destroy you. We can still, on our side, work to protect the children, even if the family court system will not, because it doesn't. And so I work with them throughout the entire process and the strategy and all of it.
It's great to have a resource like you. Where can people find you, Kate?
They can find me. Everything is at my website, kateanthony.com. I am on Instagram at The Divorce Survival Guide. And my podcast is the Divorce Survival Guide podcast. And I have a healthy relationship checklist. So if you go to kateanthony.com/healthy relationship, all one word, you can take the healthy relationship checklist quiz. It's like an assessment of whether or not your relationship is healthy. And it'll give you some vital information.
We love that. And, for anybody listening, I think that hiring a divorce coach, like somebody to help you get through the process, could be like it sounds like it can be like super beneficial. Because
it can be a game changer.
It is a difficult thing to navigate. The reality is that it's a difficult thing to navigate. And so it's nice to have somebody other than your attorney there to answer any other questions or help guide you in a direction that you might need a little bit extra help.
Right. And attorneys they're not trained in the emotional, it's sort of like a factory thing for them. And they very often don't take the time to explain a lot of things to you and help you with the emotional processing. Right. And so it can actually cost you less money to hire a divorce coach because it'll save you money on attorney's fees.
Well, Kate, I have loved having this conversation with you. I think you are a wealth of knowledge. I hope all of the listeners go check it out. I hope that you share this podcast with a friend who might be just going through it and needs to hear this information. We're stronger together. I love being on this journey with you, Kate, with all of our listeners and everybody in our audience. And I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to chat with you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikki. It's been a pleasure.
This podcast was brought to you by Sana Skin Studio. Be sure to use my code, TheNoGlow, for $25 off of your first facial at Sana when booking via sanaskinstudio.com. More than a skin studio, Sana is a movement towards healthier skin and self-love. Thank you so much for listening to The Know. If you loved this episode, go ahead and share it with a friend. Words are so powerful, and someone may need to hear what we covered today. And if you really loved this episode, please take a moment to rate the show and leave a review. Your comments are so important and valued, and they give other listeners insight on what to expect on The Know. You can connect with me personally via Instagram at Nikki Sap Spo and The Know with Nikki Spo. My hope for you today is that you are fearless in looking inward so that you can be your highest, most authentic self and go after the life of your dreams.